Hey everyone, welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about the elephant in our quiet apocalypse, Blackfrost. I've had quite a few of you express me wanting to do a first impressions video about Blackfrost, but I figured I would do you guys one better and provide you with a video diving into everything that we know about the game so far. In researching for this video, I went through the Steam page, some forums, and even had a short message conversation with Raphael, the director of Hinterland. I'll be sharing everything we know for sure from official Hinterland statements, what to expect for the Long Dark once Blackfrost has been released, more speculatory details, and cover some of my thoughts and theories for what we may see in Blackfrost. So without further ado, let's jump right into this like you falling into the ice while trying to loot that trunk you found while beachcombing. The first thing that we know for sure is when and where Blackfrost will take place. On the Steam page for Blackfrost, it says the following. A year after the Aurora's appearance and the world went dark, the people of Harmont and its vast wild environs struggle to survive the quiet apocalypse. Survive alone or with others against a host of new hazards and a fresh new survival sandbox from a pioneer of the genre. Live together, die alone. This description lets us know that Blackfrost will take place a year after the Long Dark, which I think is very fun because that means that for each survivor you have in the Long Dark, you can now think about how past 364 days of surviving, the events of Blackfrost are taking place simultaneously with you in the Long Dark, which is a very cool thing to think about in my opinion. We also know that Blackfrost will take place in Harmont and the surrounding wilderness, a fictional town that is located in northern mainland Canada. Another thing that Blackfrost sets a new tone for in the Quiet Apocalypse is that it's going to be cooperative survival, unlike the Long Dark solo experience, with the game featuring multiplayer and NPC characters as well. Blackfrost builds on a decade of construction, experimentation, and community-informed development of an experience we love dearly. It expands beyond the egocentrism of the Long Dark and asks you, not how far will you go to survive, but how far will you go to survive for others. The others could be other players in co-op, but also other survivors in the world, NPC communities hiding out from the dangers of the Aurora, the radioactive Blackfrost, and a whole host of new threats they experience in the city of Harmont and the vast wilderness surrounding it. What new scenarios, gameplay mechanics, and stories could such a setting inspire? Raphael in a forum post regarding Blackfrost. As that quote states, there are going to be a lot of new, unfamiliar mechanics and threats in Blackfrost that will require even the most seasoned of Long Dark players to learn new skills. Additionally, Hinterland has made it a point to let the community know that Blackfrost is going to be an experience that is complementary to the Long Dark, implying that well-seasoned players should still be able to apply a lot of their knowledge from playing the Long Dark within Blackfrost while still being challenged in new, unique ways. For those of you who have grown up with the Long Dark over the years, Blackfrost is not the end. It is only the beginning of the next chapter. We see both the Long Dark and Blackfrost coexisting for a long time, with each game having a distinct point of view around the Quiet Apocalypse. With Blackfrost, we are pushing our philosophy and vision for survival forward in ways we could never have believed possible when we first launched the Long Dark back in 2014. Raphael later in that same forum post. This quote here is especially important because not only does it hint towards possible future installments of games taking place during the Quiet Apocalypse, it also helps players skeptical about if they're going to enjoy Blackfrost, as it tells us that Hinterland intends to continue bringing updates to the Long Dark even after Blackfrost has released, and won't be treating Blackfrost as a replacement to the Long Dark, helping them coexist for years to come. Speaking of Blackfrost's release, in that same forum post from Raphael, he tells us that Blackfrost won't launch until 2026. This will likely not be the full launch of the game, however, and instead will likely be the beginning of the game's early access days. So it's likely that we won't see the full release of the game until a couple years after that. That's all we know for sure, so let's talk about some of the more speculatory stuff. It seems like Blackfrost will be the first sandbox survival game that is built from the ground up as a survival RPG, meaning that there will still be the survival sandbox gameplay that we all know and love from the Long Dark, but with a new twist of how your survival will impact and interact with other survivors in Harmont. Additionally, there are some places that talk about new will-to-live systems that intend to add psychological elements to the game, but I haven't been able to find any official sources talking about that. Looking back at some of our earlier quotes from the forum post, something called Blackfrost is mentioned, and described as radioactive. This, along with the imagery of the nuclear plant in Blackfrost Announcement trailer, means that there will likely be new radioactivity-based mechanics and afflictions within the game. Now, let's look at some of the images of Blackfrost and see what they can tell us about the game. But before I show any, I want to note that since it's so early in the game's development, it's very likely that a lot of these images are just concept art, but we can still glean a couple of interesting things from looking at them. I wanted to look at this image first, where we see a survivor in a diner holding a hatchet and staring at a wolf. First of all, I want to talk about the lighting. This image strikes me as one of the more likely ones to be an actual picture of early gameplay, or at least close to it. So that lighting is stunning. But if that's what the lighting will look like in Blackfrost, and the graphics are similar to what we see in the diner and other images, then it would seem that Blackfrost is going in a different direction stylistically than the Long Dark did. Where the Long Dark crafted its world with lower poly assets, and beautiful watercolor-esque imagery. Blackfrost seems to be taking a more high graphic approach, but not to the point of pure realism. But anyways, enough speculating on lighting. Let's talk about the scenario we see in this picture. Just this one image suggests to us that wildlife might be more free to enter indoor locations, and that you may be able to wield weapons in first person and not only during struggles with wildlife. Two very interesting things that will change how your survivors interact with the world around them and wildlife within. Next up, I want to look at this picture where we see a road stretching a densely wooded hill, with a gas station at the hill's base. This not only shows how Blackfrost's world may look, but also may indicate its size. Unlike the regions on Great Bear, where you can see cliffs and mountains separating out the regions of the island, most of the imagery we have seen of Blackfrost's world has been very open, with this image being a great example of that. This leads me to believe that there may be little to no loading screens to move around the world, which would make sense due to the multiplayer nature of the game. Loading different areas for different players causes a lot of resource strain on multiplayer servers, so Blackfrost may be built to avoid loading screens, keeping everything part of one major area and increasing fluidity. I also want to look at this image of a survivor holding a storm lantern as they approach a cabin. We can also see a meter for the lantern in the bottom right, which leads me to believe this may also be a picture of actual gameplay. There are a couple things I want to point out in this picture, the first being the difference in the appearance of the storm lantern. This means that we can most likely expect to see some design changes to familiar items beyond just graphical improvements. The second thing I want to point out is the piles of logs near the cabin's porch. Now, this is heavy speculation on my part, but it doesn't seem to me like those logs spawn there as part of the environment. When you play games, especially survival games, the built-in environments are generally made to be immersive, resulting in things rarely being perfectly organized or aligned, as pixel-perfect stuff like that is very jarring to see in an untouched place. So to me, those perfectly piled logs scream, I made a firewood storage, collected logs, and placed them there for future use, leading me to believe that there may be a lot more methods of storing and organizing equipment around your base. And for the final thing with this image, I want to quickly look at this clip from the announcement trailer where we see a survivor chopping down a tree. Now this could just be for the vibe of the trailer, but I think it's more likely hinting towards a mechanic where your survivor may be able to chop down trees, which could be to mass harvest firewood, or potentially for building structures. It isn't clear if full base building will be a mechanic in the game, and I personally don't think it would fit the experience very well, but there are ways they could do it, and with the ability to chop down entire trees, it definitely cracks that door open a little bit. Finally, let's briefly look at this image, which shows a forest along a body of water with a boat that's broken down in the shallows. This very much seems like concept art to me. However, it does imply that there might be areas in Blackfrost that have coastlines, meaning we might see returning mechanics like beachcombing or even possibly a different form of the trader. Let's get ready to close out this video by looking at some of the parts of the announcement trailer that I believe provide small glimpses into possible mechanics that could be in Blackfrost. The first thing that caught my eye was this scene with the polluted water, which I think may be an indicator that we may see some pollution mechanics in the game, causing us to think about how safe our water sources may be. I also want to look at this. Do you guys know what this means? It's incredible. Astrid can finally eat a horse. Anyway, with that little joke aside, we seem to be getting told here that horses will exist in Blackfrost, which also in turn hints at the world being very large with few loading screens, meaning faster travel via something like a horse will be something that your survivors will need to seek out. Additionally, this scene here gives me a couple ideas. First off, we could be getting a horse travois, allowing for the transport of large amounts of supplies that surpass anything that we see in the Long Dark. But the most interesting thing here to me is the unconscious person that's being carried on the travois. To me, this tells us that we could be seeing mechanics where, rather than dying when you run out of condition, you may become incapacitated instead, with a period of time where another survivor could find you and get you to safety. This idea also is made stronger due to Blackfrost being multiplayer, as having a way for other survivors to help you from fading into the quiet apocalypse, instead of just dying, strengthens that cooperative experience. The last thing I want to mention here is a little personal theory I have about how radiation might work in Blackfrost. Obviously, the broken nuclear power plant will cause radiation in the surrounding area, but that makes it easy to avoid by simply basing somewhere else. I had an idea that I think not only would make a lot of sense for the setting of Blackfrost, but also for making radiation more threatening. My theory is that radiation will become incredibly deadly during auroras, as the electricity surges, bringing the abandoned plant back to life. Now, I don't know anything about nuclear energy, but I'm pretty positive that it requires constant, careful maintenance in order to be safe. And if there's one thing that we all know about the aurora, it's that it's anything but careful and consistent. The surges of electricity, combined with the damaged infrastructure of the power plant, could result in catastrophic radiation surges during auroras, which could affect larger areas in the following days, slowly wearing off until it's back to its original area, but spiking again with the next aurora. But of course, that's just my theory. my Blackfrost theory. And that's it for today, guys. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. After doing this dive into all we know about Blackfrost, it has made me more excited for the game and curious on how Hinterland will approach these new areas. Let me know down in the comments if you also are excited for Blackfrost, and if you enjoyed the video, give it a like as it really helps out the channel. So once again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.